Hi, and welcome back to Mana Tutor MTG Draft. We've seen a lot of comments saying you're having trouble navigating Tarkir Dragonstorm drafts, so that's what we're going to tackle in today's episode. Matt, ready to dive in?
Let's dive in.
In previous short episodes, we highlighted taking bombs, then 3-color fixing, you know that you're in, then removal, then 2-color fixing, you know that you're in, then base 2-color filler. But that doesn't tell you what kind of deck to end up in, and I think that's where people are having trouble.
Yeah.
Knowing what decks they should target to end up in, and once they're targeting a specific deck, when to pivot into a different deck. That's what we'll focus on in this episode, what decks to target and when to pivot.
So first up, we're going to talk about what decks to target. There are really two main targets. You either have white-based aggro or you have blue-based control. White-based aggro, we mentioned in our previous episode that white is kind of tuned and pushed to be aggro in this set. You've got plenty of, small creatures to get in underneath your opponents. You can enable that with both Jeskai or with Mardu, target a wider board and hit your opponent hard. The data confirms that when you're aggro, you really want to be in white. The vast majority of the time, you'll be red-white because red helps you to burn through your opponent's creatures, helps you to get more creatures out. There's a lot of cheap, fast red creatures. It's really the only other aggressive color in the set. Now, it's possible to be heavy, almost mono white, and pair it with black, but white red is 2.5 times more likely to be drafted than white black for a reason. White red is nearly 20 times more drafted than white blue and white green. And it also wins nearly 4% more often than all the other white pairings. So as a result, you're really incentivized to go into a base white red if you want to go aggro. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have blue-based control. We also mentioned in our pre-release episode that blue was the primary control color. So if white-red is aggro, it makes sense that for control, you're probably targeting sort of the opposite of that, which would be blue-green. And while you can be black-green, black's kind of the worst color in the set just by overall win rates and card rankings. And it's also a color that you'd fight with the Mardu aggro decks over. Now, blue-red is also a decent off-ramp from blue-green if the green is drying up in your draft. But blue-red is drafted half as often as blue-green and performs almost 1% worse on average, just given the power of green in the set. So in summary, you either want to be aggro or you want to be control in this format. There's very little, I think, in the mid-range there. There is a little bit in black-green mid-range, but they have trouble dealing with how wide the white aggro decks can be or how disruptive the blue control decks can be.
And I think that takes us to when do you pivot from one deck into the other? You should start in whichever deck is best based on your early picks and stick to that path until a clear signal indicates you should pivot. A clear signal is usually when a card for the other deck is around 2.5 letter grade steps above in its deck the option for your deck. Filtering 17 lands data for deck-specific contexts, taking the archetypes and seeing where they rank among the archetypes, or clicking on the cards in limitedgrades.com is useful to be able to see, in this context, how the card performs in that deck. For example, you might see a C+ for your deck, but a B for the other deck. In this case, you should immediately pivot and take the B card. Immediate pivots let you benefit from taking the more powerful card now and sets you up in later picks as it's likely you've moved into an open lane. It's much better to do this and abandon your early start than fight the players to your right for the remainder of Pack 1 and all throughout Pack 3. And I think it might be helpful for our listeners to hear a couple of signs that you might not be pivoting early enough. And the first sign is, during a pick, you find yourself immediately regretting not taking a card in a different lane the pick prior. And the second sign is you don't realize until Pack 3 that another deck was open to your seat. If you find either of those happening, you probably are not pivoting early enough. You should pivot upon the very first signal that you have a different deck open to your seat. So Matt, do you want to take a look at some examples from our drafts to indicate where we pivoted or saw an opportunity to pivot where we didn't?
Yeah, let's dive into some examples. But before we do, we've reached about 900 subscribers, and we're now only about 100 away from reaching our 1,000 subscriber goal. So please don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this content. And let us know down in the comments, too, what you want to see, because that always helps us when we're making more content.
And in our first example, we have probably the most straightforward pivot here. You see I first picked Inevitable Defeat, and I second picked Mardu Devotee, so I was starting down a Mardu path. But then pick 3, I'm immediately presented with Karakik Guardian and Teamer Battlecrier. And Karakik Guardian, I like a little bit more than Teamer Battlecrier. I would have liked either of those. There was a Duty Beyond Death that I was tempted to take here to stay down the path. But like I could continue Mardu, but Karakik Guardian and Teamer Battlecrier are significantly enough stronger than any of the Mardu cards that it's an indication that, the person to my right and, well, the person to their right too here, pick 3, passed on those. And it indicates I should probably move into Teamer. So while I'd love to play, it's like a bomb, Inevitable Defeat, I don't want to be fighting over the Mardu cards. And if they're passing these Teamer cards, those are the 2 main decks, right? So it's likely that they're picking up some Mardu cards and that I should immediately move into Teamer. So I did that here, I think correctly. And I got paid off, actually. The next pick was another Teamer Battlecrier. So I then, took that and went down the Teamer path. And I think that was a right early pivot.
Right. And as a, matter of fact, like if you had continued down that path, and you go back to pick 4, there wasn't really much in here. Like the black cards are not good. The white cards are not good, really. I mean, Lightfoot Technique is okay. Stormshriek Feral is fine, but like, yeah, you'd much rather have the Battle Crier here, or even a Snakeskin Veil for that, or even a Digger Island Dragon, like Focus the Mind. These are all great teamer cards, and you read that really well.
And then here's a draft where I didn't read as well. I first picked the Storm Shell here. I do think this was actually my very first draft, so there's a little bit about signals,
Sure.
not necessarily being able to be read, and also I have a fairly weak first several picks here because I was still learning the set, right? That said, I'm on a blue-green path here, and I see a Rune Scale Stormbrood here that I end up picking to kind of stay down that Teamer type path. But there is a Frontline Rush right here, which is a great card in white-red. And the fact that this is pick 7, that, again, maybe people didn't know that this was such a good card, but still, it's a card that reads well even day 1. I would have taken it had I known that, the white-red Boros path or Mardu path was open. And I do think it led me down to a better deck if I took Frontline Rush here. So I missed that one.
So here's one of mine where I didn't read the pivot, right? I could have pivoted from blue-green to blue-red with a splash of white to Jeskai. My first few picks, definitely went down the teamer path. I had 2 traveling botanists, like really good cards. I had Marang, again, really good card, one of the best win rates in the set. And I took Stormplane Detainment here because I could probably splash in white with, all of the traveling botanists and other cards that I might be able to pull in just because green has a lot of splashability. But what I really should have done, I think, is take Teeming Dragonstorm. Teeming Dragonstorm is a great card in Jeskai, and it just enables you to play more controlling, build up your board a little bit, gives you some defenders. So I really think I should have, pivoted at that point and started, going into blue-red with a splash of white as opposed to continuing down the teamer path.
Yeah, you continued down blue. You had blue, green, red, splashing white, right? So that was kind of the idea here with the Storm Plane, right? Is splashing some removal on the top end, right? Stormplane Detainment performs at around a C in Jeskai type decks or any kind of the splashing decks. Inoc Wayfarer is a consideration, right? Because you're heading down that path already in the multicolor good stuff with green, and that's also in the C range. But Teeming Dragonstorm is like a B plus approximately in your Jeskai decks. And so I would take that and speculate on Jeskai. It's tough giving up. Like, you got 2 traveling botanists, but I think those were your second and third picks, though. I think, right?
Yeah, they were pretty early. So, and a Sig Appraiser. Like I have like the good core of a teamer deck, but yeah, I could have also maybe, taken the Snowmelt Stag here and tried to keep it a little bit more open, but that's also more of a Jeskai card, I think, than a Teamer card. It can certainly play in either. But yeah, it's definitely I think a missed opportunity from me here. So we hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of the various types of archetypes that you should be looking to when you're drafting either aggro or control. Next time, what we're going to do is do a draft walkthrough where we go through a draft pick by pick, kind of walk you through our thought process, probably disagree about some of those picks, and then see, at the end what we end up with. But let us know down in the comments what you would like to see, and that'll help us decide what to do next. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.
See you in the next one.